I think we're live. Wonderful. I'll just let a few people get on here. It's good to see everyone again. Glad to be back. And we'll just have some people get on. And we'll just wait a little bit. I hope you guys' day is going well. I hope everyone's had a wonderful day. It's been very quiet right here on my end. But thank you again for joining us. Let me see if our guest is in here today. So for those of you that are just joining, we're doing a series called the Gender Justice Series. And my name is Bolanle, and I am going to be hosting it throughout this week. And of course, this is in partnership with Wardic and also Women's Radio. We're going to be having a very interesting conversation today because throughout this week, we're going to be talking about issues pertaining specifically to gender. And, you know, talking to women who are influential, women who in so many ways have the capacity to create a lot of change. And we're going to be having a conversation with them in regards to gender justice. So let me just see if our guest is here yet, and then we will go ahead and get started. Give it a few more minutes. But for those of you who are just joining this series, I want to let you know that yesterday we had a conversation with the First Lady of Ekiti State, Erelupisi Faimi, and that is on Instagram. I believe our guest is here. All right, so the conversation today is going to be on empowering and protecting women, youth, and girls in Kwara State. And our guest, I'm very excited to have her on. She's been willing to have this conversation with us, and I think that it's going to be good to get a different perspective on what it really means to empower women, youth, and girls, and also what it means to empower them simultaneously while also protecting them. So let me go ahead and invite our guest. She's the First Lady of Kwara State, and she is an astute diplomat. And in so many ways, I feel a kinship to her because funny enough, my dad is also a retired diplomat. So let me go ahead and invite her in. And we'll just go ahead and get this. All right. So we're just gonna have Dr. Olufolake Abdulrazaq, the First Lady of Kwara State, join us in for this conversation. Hello, good evening, ma.
Hello, good evening, Bolanle. Good to see you.
It's good to see you too. Thank you so much for taking time to be here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
I had a conversation with your dad, actually, and I told him I was going to be having a chat with you. So
he called me late last night and was like, "You're doing an interview tomorrow with a colleague of mine," and I was
yes.
like, "Oh, okay."
Yes, indeed. Honestly,
you know,
and not just was he, our former ambassador to Australia, and now he's also DG to, I still work with him on the economic side of things right now.
Yes,
and he's doing a fantastic job.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. I was supposed to send him a link to this. I completely forgot. He's going to be quite upset with me. But he told me that he wanted to do it on Instagram. He was like, he has Instagram. And I was like, please don't get on Instagram. You don't need to be on Instagram. So I'll send it to him afterwards. But how is it going on? How is it going at your end, being with the lockdown and kind of just different times, really, for all of us all over the world?
Yeah, 2020 has been really challenging. The COVID-19 pandemic has obviously meant lockdowns around the world.
Yes.
It's meant a completely different lifestyle. And, everybody's had to make so many different changes in their lives. Hopefully people are coping well mentally as well as physically. Because, for some people, lockdowns and the isolation involved is just not easy for some people. So I think it's also important to tell everyone to kindly reach out. You can't possibly see everyone, but reach out in some way to those, especially those that are living alone
Yes.
anywhere. Yes, because it must be very lonely for them. So,
Definitely.
you know,
It's
yeah,
different times, and it's
yeah.
great to see that you're doing well. I was
Thank
reading through
you.
your bioma, and it's interesting because when I was reading it and I was reading all the different postings and the different experiences, I was like, "Oh wow, this is so familiar to me." But for
And
a lot of people might not know that, you're a seasoned diplomat and you've been on multiple different postings. So tell us a little bit about that history and what even inspired you to go into foreign service.
okay, well, you would know this very well. I mean, the lifestyle of a diplomat and a diplomat's child. So it really exposes you to the world. You live in different parts of the world, and it's very inspiring. I was in Washington D.C. with my dad, and who was at that time information attaché, and I
Right.
decided, and I decided probably at the age of 7 or something like that, that I wanted to become a diplomat. And I really I never shifted. I just
Right.
went on at him. I did a first degree, in history. I did a postgraduate diploma in mass communication. And then I did a master's in international law and diplomacy. So my dad was like, right, you haven't left this, have you? You really do want to do this? And I said, yes. So we we made sure we got applications, and the rest is history, really. So that's how I
Yeah.
joined.
And normally I wouldn't ask this question, but I ask it because of from my inside knowledge of what it means to be a woman working in foreign service. This is something that is unarguable. It really is a different experience for women. I remember a lot of times during postings, a lot of situations, maybe the woman would go on posting. And for those of you that don't know, when we say a posting, it means, the foreign ministry has said you should go and serve at an embassy in multiple different locations around the world. And that means that you have to live somewhere for 3 to 4 years. And I found that it was an interesting relationship where a lot of times the woman would come by themselves. If they were married, the dynamics of, does your husband move with you, and leave behind his job? And of course, when he's on posting there's no opportunities to work because a diplomat's spouse cannot work. So, talk to me a little bit about your own experience and what that was like for you being a woman and working in foreign service.
Yes, obviously, as you know, in a lot of homes, the man is the breadwinner,
Yeah.
and maybe sometimes when the woman is working, it's added, but the man is usually considered the breadwinner. So when a woman is posted abroad, sometimes, she may go alone, and her husband comes to visit her a lot of the time.
Right.
It works in a lot of ways, especially if you have a spouse who is self-employed and has their own time to come and go as they please. So, they can come and go as they please as often as they wish.
Right.
It's a bit more lonely if it's a spouse that has a formal job and can only take a few days off at a time for leave. But, I've been very proud of our female diplomats and our female ambassadors. They've really
Yeah.
worked hard and soldiered on and kept their homes as well as, work and, and done all that. But these days, Nigeria has obviously signed a lot of agreements
Right.
with several different countries, and spouses can work in certain
Right.
countries.
Right.
So I think that's made it easier for a lot of people. Yeah.
So, this is kind of a great segue into the conversation that we're going to be having today. We're talking about gender justice and how can we ensure that, specifically in your state, the women, the youth, the girls are empowered. What would a gender just community and society look like for you?
Okay. First of all, to get into that, I think we should first of all acknowledge today as the Day of the African Child. And the theme is actually very interesting because it says friendly justice for the African child. So obviously the African child includes a lot of women, a lot of girls. So we're looking at justice for girls as well as, as well as for boys. So that leads us into the gender just, scenario. it's important that in any planning of any country, you take the gender roles very seriously. The planning, you need to plan for girls and plan long term for them to be viable partners in the society. Because, you know, when you have half of your society not well taken care of, not well educated, not putting in their best or not being allowed to put in their best, obviously society is limping on because, you know, you can't, we put so much onto the men to achieve. And sometimes there are a lot of women who are so astute, who are so brilliant, you know, and it's important to be able to nurture them so that they feel that they can achieve anything in this world, you know, and that's leaning towards a gender just society whereby, I mean, we're not saying that everybody, you know, you're not trying to be like a man, you know, you're trying to achieve your own potential. And in that regard, I think, you know, the leanings that women put on certain jobs should be recognized. The fact that they're better at certain things, you know, should also be recognized. And that way, you know, you have a more robust society where things are working for most people, you know, not that things are not working for everyone. You know, when they say you educate a woman, you educate a nation. I mean,
Definitely.
you can't, yeah, that is so important. I mean, women primarily are the carers in the home. And when you look at a woman, you expect that she's able to impart a lot of things onto the children. So, you know, you want a woman who can, I mean, I think if I were a man, I would want a woman who would be able to bring up my children in a way and manner that I would, you know, that I would be proud of, as well as whatever I do in addition. So, you know, certain things women do a lot better, and certain things we do as equally as good as men. And therefore, you know, I think that should be recognized. And if we do that, you see that society moves on a lot better. We put so much pressure on men to do so many different things. And the women, you don't put as much emphasis on them achieving things. And that impacts on society, really. So a gender just world is a world where a woman feels that she can achieve her potential, her true potential, can get to the top of her career, you know, and be justly rewarded, can do everything, you know, that a man can do and possibly better.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, it's encouraging to hear that specifically having women, you know, like you in influential and leadership positions. But do you think that in Kwara State, and I'm asking whenever we're doing these interviews, we're talking specifically about your experience and your interaction with your community. Do you feel like this is a conversation that people are still nervous to have? People are still a bit uncomfortable when they hear your daughter should have access to equal education. And this is just based on your experience now in Kwara State.
Okay, well, you know, in Kwara, there's still a lot of places where women, girls aren't really as educated as they should be, but that is changing now. And you know, with the governor's initiatives in education, you know, they're reaching now a lot more women, a lot more girls. Girls are being prioritized in school, and so many things are happening for girls. So, and you know, I don't know if you've heard much about what is going on in Kwara. In order to encourage women and encourage their participation in every form of life, you know, the governor, you know, has appointed so many women into so many different, works of life, you know, from our head of service to the head of the civil service to the head of the social, and then so many commissioners and so many other people. So the governor has done his bit to encourage girls and women to see women in high position and to emulate them. And then the innovations in education have meant that, you know, girls are able to do so much. They feel that they can go to school and do everything they can. On my part, I work, you know, with my team, and we make sure that we reach out to a lot of female groups. We have so many female groups, and then we have, like, this topic we're doing today is called Women, Youth, and girls. And
yeah,
so,
yeah.
you know, and that's deliberate because I have a lot of youth organizations as well that include, you know, young men as well
Young
as
men, of course.
women.
Right,
Because,
right.
you know, I think there's usually a lot of emphasis on training the girls, making sure they're good homemakers, making sure that this and that and the other. But also it's important to train young men how to appreciate women. So it's important to have that conversation with boys as well as young men as well. So I work with a lot of these female groups. My initiative is called the Ajike People Support
Yes.
Center. And with Ajike, as well as my, you know, my team in the office. So we do a lot to reach out to these groups. There's some groups that we have constantly with us that engage with us on any activity that we do, and my support groups as well. So young girls are you know, we reach out to them. We make sure that we show them what is achievable in life. There was an event in Abuja not too long ago, and I made sure that a whole, you know, busload of students came from Kwara to watch a young lady, a 21-year-old lady, start a foundation. And just to see that, you know, what is possible if you put your mind to it. She's a university student, and she set up a foundation, and they came, and you could see their eyes popping open that, you know, if she can do this sort of thing, you know, a large launch with school, you know, kids and big members of the society attending. I attended. She had first ladies attending and all that. So it was very important for them to look at that and see what you can achieve. I also have a group that I send into schools to look at you know, what is going on with regards to, now this is really topical right now, the gender-based violence that we're doing. Yeah. So it's nice that the whole country has stood up to this, because I don't know what has happened during the pandemic that has made this spike in this gender-based violence. It's really been something, and I'm happy that the whole country is responding. Everybody's stepping up to this. On our part, I don't. You spoke to First Lady Ekiti.
Yes, we spoke to
Last time. Yes,
she mentioned that the governor's wives have come together.
Exactly. So we've all come together. She's the chair of the committee, while I'm the secretary, and everybody's working hands down to make sure that we adopt all these right laws and you know, make sure that the laws move and work for everybody. So going back to my group, I have these support groups that work with Ajike and my office, and they go into schools, and sort of, some of them are counselors, some of them are just young entrepreneurial people that the school kids can look up to. So they go into the schools and talk to them, and it was unbelievable how many young girls, you know, were able to open up to them about, you know, their experiences.
Being a survivor, yeah.
Yes, being survivors, and, you know, so many other things. Some are just on the cusp. Somebody's, you know, really being, you know, they could feel some form of unhealthy attention being paid to them. So they were able to talk to, they were able to talk to, you know, my guys and the counselors that we sent into the schools. We keep monitoring these children, and we make sure that, you know, some of them, they get to know in wherever they are, wherever they live, that there are people watching out for them. So this, I think the children appreciate this, because it really means that they feel well taken care of. So I think
what kind of responses, you know, you've talked about, and we're going to go back to empowerment, but just while we're on this issue, what kind of responses would you like to see, you know, law enforcement officers and also the judiciary sector in Kwara State have towards issues that have to do with gender-based violence?
Yes, so I think this is why everybody's, you know, they're all hands on deck now. The governor's declared a state of emergency on, you know, gender-based violence. And this means that everything now has to be expedited to make sure that all the laws are in place, to make sure that the judiciary, as you've just mentioned, because what we have now is a lot of cases being reported, but very few convictions. So very few convictions, and that is due to a lot of things, you know, not just necessarily the judiciary not doing a lot. You have societal issues whereby people do not report this, or even sometimes when they report the cases, later on they recant their story. Maybe somebody's put pressure on them.
Yeah.
So they recant the story. Sometimes you have instances where, you know, they go on and they want to go to court, and then they send emissaries to the family and, you know, say, don't do this. And then the family decides, okay, we're not reporting this. And then you have stigma. You know, some parents don't want their children known to have been survivors of rape or gender-based violence. So they keep mum. They don't want to go through the whole process of being named, you know. So that culture of silence is something that we're really targeting on. So we've worked through an action plan for a whole year, and how we're going to move ahead in all these things and make sure that we really get to the bottom of it, and make sure that we stamp it out to the barest minimum, because it is, you know, it has really become really something that we're not happy at the turn that it's taking.
It's really an issue, but what kind of communication do you think we need to have? You know, I always say that sometimes it feels like we're talking to ourselves, us in, you know, online, and we're just kind of having a conversation with ourselves. Are we really communicating with the people that are in the communities, the people that are grassroots? How can we communicate effectively this idea of removing stigma so that there can be a lot more freedom, and, you know, you can see a lot more people reporting crimes that have to do with gender-based violence?
Yes. So this is the only way, you know, people have to report it. It has to be taken up. It has to go all the way to the judiciary. People have to be convicted. A lot of governors now have, you know, it's a crime now. So apart from the child right law, you also have the you know, Violence Against Prohibition Act, the CAPP Act, and you know, all these are just meant to make sure that justice is served. So to get to the community and make sure they do their part, it has to be ongoing conversations. We do this at this level, and this gives a lot of people the ideas of what to do at the community level. We're inspiring several different groups to take up, you know, their own sort of activism in this on this topic. We engage people in the community a lot of the time via our local television stations and local radios, because a lot of the time some people who do not have TV have radio, and they listen to the radio. Yes. We also have megaphones and things that we do to preach this topic in places like markets, and you know, places where people can hear the message and know the places to call if they ever feel threatened, you know, by such things. And we work with all the various stakeholders. They also make sure they go into the community. In some states, it's the Social Development Ministry. In some states, it's the Women's Affairs Ministry. And then the Women's Affairs Ministry at the federal level as well. And all the other stakeholders, CSOs, NGOs, you know, who all work in this field. So it's important to carry everybody along and make sure that they're penetrating the society. Go to the rural areas and make sure that you speak to people. Because, you know, sometimes you hear these reports that the perpetrators are known to the to the victim. A lot of the time, they're actually known to the victim. And we had a robust campaign last year where the First Ladies did so much. We did talks, workshops. You know, we did a great big walk in Kwara and invited some celebrities. So we also use the celebrities as well, because, you know, they have great, huge followings, and therefore they can also pass on messages for us, you know, to their following. And you walk through certain areas where people see you, and they imbibe the message, you know, that you're trying to pass across. Like I said, all the stakeholders from the top tier of government all the way down, the NGOs, the CSOs, and whatnot. Today, in Kwara, like a couple of days ago, there was a standstill against rape by some commissioners, led by the Commissioner for Social Development, and all of them. They did that. with some CSO organizations. Today, the Human Rights Commission was in my office, to also come and say, we are also watching out. We want to make sure that people's human rights are protected. And, so we need all these organizations to come on board and to do these things. The National Orientation Agency is doing an event coming up with some NGOs. We have a few NGOs on board with them who are also doing these things. So I think that is the way to go. So to reach the grassroots, local TVs, local radios, moving into the community with counselors and with people like that. And the First Ladies have plans to have centers, these centers where you can, get women, because shelters.
Yes, Karen also she mentioned that you're working on a center where women can a shelter, so that if they know they reported, they have somewhere to go, because we also know how much lack of empowerment causes a woman who's in a domestic violence situation to remain. And that's why I want to go on to talk a little bit about empowerment. And you mentioned this idea that you took a group of girls, youth, to Abuja so they can see someone do something that maybe they feel they could never have achieved. And I know that Nigeria is a very transactional society, right? In the fact that also we have a strong ideology that the man is a breadwinner. How challenging has it been letting people understand what it means to be empowered as a woman? And specifically when you're talking to women and girls, what kind of conversations do you have to have in Kwara State? Because Kwara State it has a different demographic from people who live in Lagos. In Lagos, Lagos people are generally always on a hustle, whether it's just because it's so expensive to live here, first of all. So what's the experience like when you're talking to young girls and women about empowerment and this idea that their lives doesn't have to be about just being, a homemaker. They can do something alongside that if they choose to.
Yeah, well, you talked about young women and people in Lagos generally always being on a hustle. In Kwara, the women, wow, they are very entrepreneurial. They're in one small business or the other. I work very closely with all the small businesses, the SMEs, and a lot of them are women. And then we have the tailors. I am matron to a countless number of organizations, female organizations, and most of them have to do with entrepreneurial activities. So the small scale farmers, they come to see me all the time in every different field. The Ashoke weavers, because in Kwara we have the Ashoke, which we send all over Nigeria and everywhere else. And they call it Ashofi in Kwara. And that is so well received everywhere. So they are there in that industry. They are farmers, they are tailors, they are everything. In fact, all the masks that were made during COVID-19, which were distributed, were made by the Tailoring Association, most of them women. They also came to see me in my office and we saw the quality of the masks that they were making. I have, empowerment, the way that I have defined it so far in Kwara in the last 1 year, thank you, has been to actually train people. So it's more skills acquisition rather than just giving them gifts or money or things like that to go start a business. Because what we realized is that sometimes when you just give them tools and things like that, they could sell them off and try to, live by that. And once they've done that, in a couple of weeks again, they're back in the poverty cycle all over again. So it's important to train them in certain skills. Then when they've got that training, then you can give them the tools. And then you find that that is sustainable. So it sustains them in that business. Little things, soap making. So a lot of the time we've done these empowerment programs where it's more skills acquisition. And they go and they learn how to do all these things, make soap, makeup. They learn how to do makeup. They learn how to tie, head tie, because one party one party, you know, you can make so much money tying everyone's head tie there.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
you know, pomade, they did sprays. In fact, I actually gave out a lot of the things they made to friends of mine who were amazed at the quality, you know, that they could get in all these items. So skills acquisition has been the way that I have gone about it. And then
Okay.
right now, currently, I've got a lot of women. I include men, like I said, in my things. I
Right.
like to make sure that at least there's, you know, a young man or somewhere in the mix of everything. And
Okay.
they're currently learning how to sew. They will go on this monthly course, and we will see how they fare, where they get to. And then we decide on how far, again, we're going to train them. We've bought the
Right.
sewing machines and everything that will be handed to them at the end of this training exercise. So that is how you make sure that they keep the job going. And they've now
Okay.
found that they can now train, they do crochet, they do everything. And this has been imbibed by everybody. So I'm not just the only one.
The internet has paused. We'll just.
Because they have a lot of young people come to them and stay with them. After school classes are organized by religious organizations. People go for various training, you know, in religious organizations, and they've also now imbibed this, and they do skills acquisition and train them in one thing or the other. They brought me several different gifts from all these things
Right.
that all the students make. So little by little, we've made sure that people become viable and can take care of their families. You'll be amazed at how much they make selling off these things, soap, you know, selling it off in the market. They are shocked at how much they're making, you know, and, you know, when you multiply this across the state, it really has an impact.
Now, it sounds as though there's a huge emphasis specifically on the skills acquisition and the technical trade. How do you feel like this can really be, you know, it can really be enlarged so that people can go from living from hand to mouth and it can become more sustainable? And where does education play into that? Because sometimes I find that with entrepreneurship, there's a gap. You can be making a lot of money, but you don't know how to leverage on that money to be sustainable. And
Exactly.
how can that gap be bridged?
Yeah. Okay. So, you know, to make it on a larger scale, and you know, we encourage everybody. That's why I reach out to companies. I reach out to everybody to try and make it part of their social responsibility to give back and, you know, try and empower and train people and make sure that they're more viable in the society. Because you know, it's amazing when these companies step in and assist you. It's amazing your reach. I mean, I got help from a few people, some of my staunch, you know, people who've channeled and supported and taken up all these quests, and it's been amazing how it rolls on. And so, making sure that companies do their give back schemes, social responsibility is very important. They get their high net worth individuals. Also, we, you know, make sure that we reach out to them to try and do something within their states and make sure that they're empowering people and making sure that they're doing a lot. Government can't do it alone. But the governor recently did something. I don't know, you know, now COVID lockdown, everybody's at home. So apart from the students being tutored online and on radio, because we did the media tuition as well. So which included radio, television, and things like that. So they were actually taking classes on radio and on TV, not just online, because some people don't have the internet. So yeah, so all that was done. Then there was also a digital training program, which was also, you know, set up, and a lot of young people, you know, cottoned on to that. So that's the technical aspect. Now for living hand to mouth, and then, you know, transcending that is just making sure that, you know, the laws of expansion. Most people who start out, a lot of people start out in their backyards doing one or two things with the help of family members. And it becomes a bigger and bigger business, and they're able to talk to, you know, financiers and all that. We had, people like the central bank and a few other financial entities come into the state, give out soft loans, little bit of loans and things like that, apart from the one that the federal government also came in and did. So all these little loans that they gave to people assisted them. I went to the event. All the farmers were there, the miners were there, all the small scale industries were there, and they felt confident to take this loan because they were able to pay back in no time at
Okay.
all. And so the confidence was there, because it's also important to instill confidence in people for
Right.
them to be able to transcend into the next step, because sometimes they can be scared, to take huge risks, which are usually involved in becoming a bigger business. So that's where the gap usually lies, because some people aren't willing to take those risks. But when you are there, you kind of hold their hand. They saw me at that conference. It was a huge conference, and people from all over the state came in various sectors, and they could feel the confidence, and therefore they were able to take up these things and pay back in no time. I also, even though I've stressed the need to make sure that it's skills-based, and most of what you do is by training people, I've also giving people money out of my pocket, because some people just want to start a business, and they just need
You want to
funding.
sell wares. Yeah.
Yes, they just need funding. So you assist them the best way you can with that. So a lot of that is what is going on. Yeah.
Do you
And I
feel
think
like
it's working.
it's so, in so many ways it feels like our society, and when you think about our economy, right? I was reading an article and it was talking about how it's really impossible for there to be a situation where a lot of people are going to be able to go into traditional jobs. There is a heavy emphasis on self-employment. Now, for the people who are struggling, what have your experiences been like in trying to engage those who really just can't do the entrepreneurship route? How can they be encouraged to be empowered? And what other options do you think can be provided for them? Because sometimes it feels like the route of self-employment is really the only option right now for so many people, because when you think about the way Nigeria is as a community, there's just very little options for formal employment.
Yes, the world has changed, and like they said, most of the jobs that are coming up now weren't there 20 years ago, and 30 years from now, most of the jobs that people will be doing then haven't even been created now.
Right, right.
So there is an emphasis towards everybody being self-employed. I mean, did we know before COVID-19 that most people could actually get their job done from home, work from
No.
home? Yeah,
No,
and
we didn't. Yeah.
also, yeah, we didn't know that. Zoom meetings, Instagram Live, that's how
Yep.
we're all getting, that's how
Yep.
we're all getting our messages across now. So you don't even have to physically see people. So a lot of companies, as you know, around the world are deciding, hang on, we can get a lot of our staff to actually work
To
from
work
home.
from home.
I think this is better. I
Yeah.
think this is a lot better, because you see, some people have challenges, like you said. It's not everybody that's so entrepreneurial that they can go out. Some people have childcare issues. Some people have, they're not, they don't have that. If they have the opportunity to work from home and submit their work and still get paid while they don't have to pay childcare, they're taking care of their own children. I believe that is something that, that can help. That can
And
help.
I want to,
Yeah.
you mentioned specifically talking about this childcare issue. What role do you think gender roles plays in women not being as empowered as they should be? I know this is global, and this is not just, particularly pertaining to Kwara State. It's happening everywhere, where you'll see a situation where women were working from home, but you have to multitask and also make sure that you're taking care of your child. And then your husband is at home with you, and you're like, well, let's do it together. Do you think our society can get towards that kind of mindset where we really understand that there can be partnership, and knowing that, especially with Kwara State, I know is a multi-ethnic group, but it's a
Very.
largely, it's a
Yeah.
largely Muslim state. So
Yes.
what role does religion also play in an ideology of what empowerment means, based on your experience in Kwara?
Well, like I told you, I have a lot of support from the religious groups. They come and see me
Yeah.
all the time. They come and tell me everything they're doing, both the Muslim and the Christian groups. And like I said, they are the ones who actually took this empowerment thing and ran with it. You know,
Right.
they came to tell me in a lot of the religious schools what they were doing with regards to training people. And I haven't seen much of a problem, you know, with empowerment and religion in Kwara. I haven't seen much of it. A lot of it's very multi-ethnic, like you said, and you know, several different languages are spoken. It's very cohesive, and people, you know, work together, which you know I found to be absolutely amazing. Very hardworking people, and you know, they work together. The religious groups have really contributed to making sure that they empower people. That's been my experience, because they actually come to see me and they feed me back from the women's groups that run the after school, all the asalatus and everything, to those that run the Christian schools and the after school clubs and the empowerment programs, which
Right.
they do everywhere. Yes, and they all train. All of these groups train, left, right, and center. They all train hard, and train the younger ones. And I think they promote entrepreneurship. I haven't met, you know, I told all of them that I haven't met a Kwara woman that's not hardworking yet. No, I've
Yeah,
not met a lazy one.
I mean, I don't even know, honestly, when I think about it, and when you really think about it, I don't know any Nigerian woman that isn't
Yes,
hardworking and
Nigerian women are
isn't,
very
you know,
hardworking.
yeah, Nigerian women are extremely, and we've always been
Yes,
entrepreneurial. It just
yeah.
seems as though there was an impression that we weren't entrepreneurial, and women are
From
finally
the
beginning to,
Yalodjas. You know, for
exactly,
those
when
who
you
don't
think
know
about
what
them,
that
yeah,
means, it's the market
yeah,
women and the heads of the markets and all that. They're amazing. I'm telling you, they're
yeah.
absolutely amazing.
And not only that, a lot of people went to school based on the school fees came from, you know,
Yeah.
your mother selling goods day in and day
Exactly.
night, you
Yes.
know.
Yes.
But I think it was just a situation where,
Your pocket
hmm
money was a little bit of this and that from, you know, from your mother's purse, from whatever she could, you know, she could get.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know, you've talked a little bit about youth and you've talked about young men, and Nigeria is currently has an incessant an epidemic of fraud in our communities, and it's happening all over the state, everywhere. You know, we can see that there's just a move where there's a lot of justification for doing fraud online. How do you think we can reorientate the minds of young, specifically with the work that you've done? How do you try and encourage them to be willing to take time to make money? You know, be willing to not jump into this overnight
Exactly. It
success.
takes
How
time.
do you reorientate their minds into that from your experience?
Yes, like you said, it takes time. It takes time to get anywhere. Any you know, individual that you're looking at now that is anywhere has put in 15, 20 years, you know, or 25 years, 30 years, you know, before they are where they are. So, you know, it's important to make sure that the youth understand this. I meet up with a lot of them. Like I said, they come and see me. I go out and I see them. I visited the NYC camp. You know, I make sure that I see them. I go all over the place. I've been invited by university groups and things like that. And the message is always that, you know, just work hard. They have fantastic ideas.
Yeah, they
And
do.
these ideas, you know, put to very good use always come right, you know. And I remember giving a group that came to see me an example that there's no reason why the next Mark Zuckerberg shouldn't come from Kwara, you know, because
Yeah,
they came
yeah,
with such brilliant ideas, fantastic ideas. And I said, this is what we're looking for, you know. And the space, the good thing is that the space in Kwara for the young people is amazing. I mean, you know, the governor appointed a 26-year-old as the commissioner for youth and sports.
that's very
And she's been
encouraging.
doing a fantastic job, you know, and with her, I try and make sure that I rally all the youth with her. We've done a lot of grassroots sports. You see, I think it's just important to keep them occupied. Because, I mean, all our mothers used to say when we were younger, an idle mind is the devil's workshop, you know? So keep them occupied. My kids, when they were growing up, they had after-school clubs. They had, you know, all manner of clubs, which kept them so
you had lessons.
occupied. They were so tired when they got home. They're so tired when they got home. So then you feed them a good meal. You know, they have their shower and they're ready for a good you know, story or something. So you have to occupy the youth. They are restless. They need engagement. They need to be, you know, motivated. So that's what we do with these grassroots sports that we've done. You know, we've promoted table tennis, softball and baseball, football, all manner of grassroots sports, which we take all over the 3 senatorial districts of the state. So with the grassroots sports, we make sure we keep them engaged. You know, we have coming up the International Day against, apart from, you know, what you said regarding fraud, which we make sure that we try and keep them occupied. And then they need to know that there are consequences for these things. You can't go into these things. If you are found guilty, there will be big, huge consequences. So, you know, that has to come back. Not celebrating people with unknown sources of wealth, you know, in our society has to come back. So that, you know, because the youth, they look up to, you know, they look up in society of people to emulate. So you must really make sure that the kind of people we're celebrating are people worth celebrating. And they look at that and so that they don't want to be like the wrong type of person. And I think gradually we'll get there. Also keep them engaged, keep their minds engaged with all these activities which they do everywhere. And, you know, you can't go wrong with that. Apart from the sports, you teach them, you know, all these little entrepreneurial things. They came the other day with ideas, technical ideas on how to do certain things. Also, you know, a few of us First Ladies have been talking about the idea that in universities, they should bring back all these little skills again. You know, we used to have the same university you went to, that, for instance, I went to University of Lagos. Okay. And while I was there doing, I think it was when I was doing my postgraduate diploma, I also did a certificate in computing. And all manner of people could come in, you know, and take that course. So universities need to go back to also offering courses that have nothing to do with degrees, you know, just certificates of competency in certain things, in certain fields. If it's food, we have a lot of people now who are going into the food industry, who are chefs and all that, you know. I'm very happy that this generation has found how to be so creative. Their creative side has really been engaged, and they're going into all those directions. So I'm all for that. So you have chefs, you have men that are chefs, and doing a fantastic job.
It's nice that it's fine. We don't all have to be lawyers and doctors anymore. And there's kind of a shift in allowing for diversity and also for people to really go after their true passions. I think the struggle has always been this, like what you said, this idea where there seems to be a lack of patience when it comes to a lot of people in my generation to really build and slow and steady, which is a combination of, you know, Nigeria is expensive all over the world. You know, it's an expensive experience to live. I want to talk about, before we wrap up, because we're running out of time here, I just want to get your final thoughts on, you know, how we can really overcome the hindrances that are not allowing women to have equal access to opportunities as men, and how we can engage men who are currently still holding a lot of the positions in power to be willing to see our perspective.
So you see why I say that you must always have men at the table as well, you know, because if you are talking, if we're talking amongst ourselves, we also have to engage the men, because a lot of them are still the ones in the decision-making seat. So we want them to make decisions in our favor. So we need to engage them and make them see, you know, the value of society with actively engaged women. women who can, do things to their full potential, and how it benefits society, how it benefits them, and I think, that's the only way. We have to dialogue. We started this saying that we're both kind of like you are a child of
I'm a
the
child of a
diplomatic
diplomat.
world,
Yeah.
and I'm in the diplomatic world.
Right.
So diplomacy is about dialogue,
Yeah.
So and they say it's when dialogue stops that war starts.
Right.
So
Right.
you need to always sit at those important tables and make sure that there's a woman at that table, and a woman who is going to further the cause and make sure that the men understand the reason why women need to be engaged in all these activities for the betterment of our society, for the betterment of our country. It can only be to our added advantage, all of us, to make
Right.
sure that women can work and can earn and can be at the table to suggest ideas on moving forward, And I think that's the only way. It's engagement, it's talking, it's knocking on the right doors, it's making sure that we write the necessary documents, make sure we send it to the appropriate places, and make sure that we have the ear of these of the men that sometimes we need to pass certain laws, legislation, acts, whatever it is, to make sure that women can be better acknowledged and better served by the state.
Yeah. Well, Doctor, I don't want to keep you too long because we're actually running out of time. But I have to say thank you for, giving us a better picture on what's really happening in Kwara State.
Yes.
And also for allowing us to be able to understand how there can be more progress. We need women like you as much as possible in positions of influence to really push for so many. And we're glad to know that, you're championing women's rights in your state. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Bolanle. I look forward to seeing you in person soon.
No problem. All right. Thank you.
Parents.
I will.
Okay.
I'll tell them.
Thank you to everyone who's joined us tonight.
Thank you very much. All right. Thank you.
See you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye. Good night.
Bye.
All right, so there you have it, the First Lady of Kwara State. She, we had a very good conversation, and I think there's so many different nuances to empowering women, but the truth about it is when it comes down to it, women have always been entrepreneurial. Women have always been determined in finding ways to really fend for themselves, but society has painted a picture that we're not interested, which is false. We're going to be having more conversations throughout the week on the gender justice series, and I hope that you guys are enjoying it. I hope you're telling your friends about it. If you missed any, you can go ahead and watch it because we'll upload it onto Insta stories. Thank you so much for everyone for tuning in tonight. My name is Bolanle and I've been your host, and I will see you next time where we'll be having another conversation with another First Lady, and it should definitely be good. I'll see you guys in a few days. All right, bye-bye.